When you look across Africa, especially in Nigeria, you notice that a lot of people have come to not know who they are. And now, drawing on this comparison, I'm going to be looking at the likes of China, I'm going to be looking at India, and I'm going to be looking at Japan, and of course, I'm going to be looking at Nigeria. And of course, myself speaking as an Igbo man. Now, one of the things that you get to notice is that when you hear a Japanese man speak, when you meet a Japanese man, first of all, aside the look, the Asians have a certain look, right? But when you meet a Japanese man, one of the first things you get to know is that he's going to give you a name that is most likely Japanese. He's most likely going to give you a Japanese name. And when you meet a Chinese man, you will know that he's Chinese by virtue of his name. Let's just say that the man is not available and all that. Let's say he sends you an email or something and you're not seeing the person, but all you can see is his name. You can see that he's Chinese. And the same thing goes for an Indian man. But the same cannot be said most times here in Africa. And of course, we have lost a significant portion of our identity. And now, one of the reasons why we need to have this identity conversation is that when you look at Nigeria as a whole, the new generation is slowly gravitating towards even English surnames in such a way that when you see someone, you just see their names and you don't even know where they are from. Let's say you see someone, his name is Michael Morgan, and he's a Nigerian. And then, of course, the next thing you begin to ask him is, where are you from? And one of the things that is the honest truth is that no matter how well you and I speak English, even if for some reason you've lived in Britain, you've developed the accent, you've lived in America, you have an American accent, that will never make you an American. That will never make you a British. You can never be an Englishman. The most authentic thing an African person can be is to be an African, is to have your identity. And one of the things that, of course, the reason this is very important that we have this conversation, I'm going to be getting into a lot of details, but the reason it is very important that we have this conversation is that this thing alone, this factor alone, is far more than enough to erode our identity. And of course, this is one of the major things that contributes to the lack of self-esteem of the African man. The moment you bring an African man and you bring a European and you bring every other person from all the races of the world, the African man automatically is not standing at the same level of confidence as every other person. The reason is because the African man has had his identity taken away from him. And years upon years upon years upon years, even after colonialism has come to an end, we still cannot stick to our original identity. Years after colonization, we still have a very colonial mindset. Let's just say, as an African man, I'm speaking to an African about something, and I say a particular thing. The moment I make that particular statement, it is probably true, but the African is not going to believe it because it is coming from an African. He is most likely going to believe it to be true if it is coming from a European or an American. How did we get here? And one of the things that you also notice is that it is far more difficult to travel around Africa than it is for you to get from here to parts of Europe. Tight borders, crazy borders. We are all there, checking ourselves, suspecting ourselves, looking at us. But then the moment you see a white man, we're very, very welcoming to Europeans and every other person except our own. This is years and decades of identity crisis in the game. That is exactly one of the things that we are facing. And one of the problems that we also have is that the movies we consume in this part of the world in no way, shape, or form help us. When you watch the Chinese, when you watch a Chinese man, when you watch Chinese movies, you know that they are Chinese. They are displaying their culture, they are displaying their kung fu. The reason people know about kung fu and all of these things is because of Chinese movies. So the Chinese used media as a means of selling themselves and promoting their culture. Indians have done the same. Japanese have done the same. Americans have done the same. But when you see African movies, one of the things it does, especially when you watch Nollywood movies these days, it demonizes everything that is African, heavily demonizes it, while exalting everything European. So the media is a problem. We use social media, we use movies, we use all of these things to promote everything except our own. And trust me, I could wear a suit. Right now I'm speaking in English. I could wear a suit, I could dress up properly, I could do all of these things, but that will never make me an Englishman. There is no way that is going to make me an Englishman. I can't be an Englishman just because I have worn a suit, and I'm speaking English. And suddenly, when you say, "Where are you from?" I can maybe mention Bristol or some city in England. I am not from there. I am from here in Africa. So the honest truth is, and when you begin to get far down, and you speak to our people, you see, let's say for instance, in fact, I think one of the worst is even the Ijaw people. You see certain names. There's this guy who has been in the house. He was in the House of Reps for many years. I don't know if he's still there. His name was James Manager. You see someone like Goodluck Jonathan. You see Edwin Clark. You see all of these guys. They have English name, and their traditional attire is the English hat. That is their traditional attire. You don't even know, prominent Ijaw names. I mean, I maybe I don't know. I think Asari Dokubo is an Ijaw man, so I think Asari, I think that's an Ijaw name, yeah. So, but very, very few people. But a lot of them, you get there, you are seeing English names, and their traditional attire is foreign traditional attire. And then you ask you, how did the original Ijaw people dress? The original Ijaws, how did they dress? And quite frankly, for me, I think my parents have given me a name. My mother did name me. She named me Ozana. And unfortunately, the name has come to stick with me over the years. The name has come to stick with me. I mean, if I could start all over again, everything I'll have will be all African names. All African names, 100%. From first name to middle name to last name, they will all be African. And that is why I'm not going to name my children English names. Because, I mean, we don't get to England or we get to America and we see anybody bearing Chukwuemeka there or we see anybody bearing Olawale there. We don't see those things there. But here, we have been colonized and our identities have been taken away. Now, one of the things you have to understand is that your name is the core of who you are. That was why the moment a lot of those our ancestors were taken into slavery, the next thing that happened was that their names were taken away from them. Their language was taken away from them. Their culture, their music, everything was taken away from them. Because if you leave them to continue bearing their names, they will be able to identify where they are from. So the ultimate way to cut them off from their roots and disorient them for many generations to come is to take away their names, their identity, and their culture. So I do believe very strongly that you're not even going to believe how many young Nigerians cannot speak in their native language. You are first an Igbo man before anything else. You are first an Hausa man, a Yoruba man. You are first an Ijaw. You are first an Edo. You are first a Bini man before anything else. So how did we get to a point where you have a lot of these people, they are very proud to tell you that they can't speak their native language and all they can speak is English. And then some people don't even know the meaning of their native names. I have seen all of these things. We have gotten to a point where we must absolutely do better. We must begin to give our children native names and stick to ancestral names. Stick to the names that identify us. Stick to the names that tell our story. Stick to the names that have clear meanings. We are seeing very funny names these days. Some of these names even sound like fruits. Someone named Zoe. I don't know if you ask them, they say it's the life of God. I don't know. How did you know the meaning of Zoe is the life of God? But if you come to me and you tell me that your name is Okwadike, I know it means the position of a strong man. If you tell me your name is Olawale, I know it means the wealth has come home. If I say Oladimeji, I know the wealth has doubled. If I say Chukwuemeka, I mean God has done well. This is Yoruba and Igbo names. So how on earth are we going to get our identity back and liberate Africa in such a way that we are able to stand toe-to-toe with our peers all over the world if we have not identified who we are on the inside? The colonial masters left us democracy, but in leaving us democracy, you can see how bad we've made a huge mess of it. It's not our system. Prior to the arrival of Europe, prior to the division of Africa, how did we live here? How did we live our lives? And how did we govern our people? Those systems proved to be effective, and that is exactly why you can see that we survived and we have lived on this continent for thousands of years. Our ancestors have lived here for thousands of years. Colonialism just a little, maybe, I don't even think it's up to 200 years. But 200 years, just 2 centuries. But our ancestors have lived here on this land and governed themselves for thousands of years, and they survived. And now we are rejecting our ancestors, and for some reason, when you go to church houses, you hear them saying every crime of the ancestors, we are praying against ancestral curses. Why is it that it's only African ancestors that have curses? Why is it that it's only African ancestors? Why don't we have? We don't hear. So many things have happened. You see, Europeans, they've done so many things. They came here, maimed our ancestors. King Leopold, and all of these very nasty things that they did to our ancestors. They did so many of these things, but guess what? Nobody goes there to tell them to pray against the curses of their ancestors and what their ancestors did. It's only African ancestors. When you think about the devil, you think about a black man. When you think about angels and God, you think about a white image. Caucasian pale skin. So as a people, we must begin to radically decolonize our minds and identify with who we are as Africans. We are first Africans before anything else. You are an Igbo man, you are a Yoruba man, and one of the things I have to give it to Yoruba people, the Yorubas have done a fantastic job at keeping their names. But Yorubas have done a fantastic job at keeping their names. You have people, they bear full-on Yoruba names. You hear names like Temi Bankole, you hear Oluwamuyiwa Olaleye, clear full Yoruba, 100% Yoruba names. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is where I bring this video to a close. Quite frankly, I really wanted to follow a script, but unfortunately, I'm not very good at following scripts. So this identity crisis that we're having in Africa, if you've watched this video all the way to this end, like, share, and subscribe. But I tell you one thing. Now that you have the opportunity to have children, we are the ones who will give birth to the next generations. Our children, even Chinese companies bear Chinese names. Our companies, our businesses should bear our names, should bear African names, so that when we go international, you can tell where the company is coming from. When we give birth to our children and they go overseas, they can proudly mention their names. And when you see their name, you know where they are coming from. It is your name that ties you to your roots more than anything else. I sincerely hope that this sits well with you and that you give this some serious thought and begin to implement it in your personal life and ultimately begin to decolonize your mind and actually embrace your African identity. There can never be a greater identity than the one you already have as an African. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.